Hi, and welcome to another episode of Nursing Your Way to Wealth, where a mental health nurse and an accountant talk about wealth creation, personal development, and financial independence in the UK to help you live the life you deserve. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Nursing Your Way to Wealth. This is episode 6. We have tag team of Alex's here again today. And today, our topic, we're thinking longer term, and we're talking about whether we're building financial freedom or are we getting tied down. And essentially, the crux of it is what type of life are you building for yourself? Have you made an intentional decision that you want to achieve a particular thing, or are you going with the flow? There'll be a bit of nuance in between, and we'll add in some extra stats and stuff. But it should be hopefully something that's a bit thought provoking and might stir some action inside somebody. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. And I'm looking forward to this one. It's a really important topic, and I think something that if you're able to define really where you're going, it will help you immeasurably over some of the short-term potential pitfalls that you might see financially. So we were just talking beforehand on some of the key topics that we're going to be covering, such as lifestyle inflation. Are you just meandering towards an end goal? Even Lamborghini pensioners, which we'll come on to. But I'm hoping, and I think a lot of this also comes down to psychology. It'd be really great, Alex, to get some of your thoughts and inputs on the psychology around why we do what we do when it comes to some of the lifestyle inflation and kind of some of the decisions that we make around purchases.
Yeah, for sure. So we also talked a little bit about supercar pensioners, espresso by the sea, and really making these intentional choices when you've got time, when time is on your side. So, for example, if you really want to retire by the sea and buy an espresso from a little cafe and drink it on the pier whilst looking out to sea as the sun rises, that can be something that you get a lot of pleasure in. And then the next step is how can you curate the life that will enable you to do that? So, and it's that kind of thing that helps with making decisions. I heard a concept fairly recently about decision fatigue. In the 21st century, here we make a lot of decisions all day, every day. We're exposed to thousands of pieces of advertising every day without even consciously thinking about it, but our unconscious or our subconscious does take all of those things in, and it does take, I think, a bit of your mental clarity away because it fills parts of your brain with these extra messages. I mean, if I said to you, Alex, something like washing machines live longer with, likely you'll think of the word Calgon because that's been popped into your head like loads of times. And if I ask you not to think about a black elephant smoking a cigar, it's going to pop into your head. You don't have any choice in that. So when you see adverts on signs or badges on things or badges on clothing or brand names anywhere, part of that, a little part of it, is being lodged in your brain somewhere. And then it comes out when perhaps you least expect it or you're drawn towards one thing instead of another. And especially in this society at the moment, it's very much I think status led. So status symbols are everywhere from what you wear, the food you eat, the places you live, the cars you drive, right down to your socks. You can have them logoed if you so wish, and it's choosing what to forego now and what to get now with a longer term goal in mind. And I know some of you, maybe even Alex, you're thinking, what if I get hit by a bus tomorrow? I mean, statistically, you're not going to get hit by a bus. You're going to look left and right before you cross the road. That's another thing that's been drilled into us, or at least me, from a young age. And it's whether you're making these decisions intentionally because you've decided of where you want to go, or are you being led through life by the psychology of advertising and purchasing and things? Because we all got to eat, we've all got to wear things. Um, so, are you being led, or are you choosing your own path?
Yeah, some really interesting points, and I think that washing machines do live longer with Calgon, and yeah, I'm where I come from is very much trying to, yeah, define what I want to be at a certain point in time and then working backwards from that. And I think, like you said, there's a huge amount of pressure to always be trading up and always, once you might eat in a certain restaurant when you're a student, but then suddenly you get you start on the career ladder, you earn a little bit more, so that you look down on that, and then you start to go to the next thing, and then move up and up and up. And similar, whether that's your clothes, your cars, your holidays, even your houses. I think houses is one of the biggest things where the bank loves to have you borrowing 5 times your salary to buy a house worth X amount, and they'll be the banker will come to you and be very much, on the lines of, "Oh, congratulations, I'll lend you X amount of money." So therefore, start looking at houses costing that much, and by the time you've kind of gone through with it, you've bought way too much house for yourself. You've got a mortgage for the next 25, 30 years, which is going to trap you in your job. And then potentially you're going to end up, once you maybe start progressing up the career ladder and you earn a little bit more, you then do it again and you borrow another 5 times your salary because the banker comes along and tells you. So you're on this constant treadmill, and it's very easy if you don't have if you almost haven't detached from what society is telling you to be doing, to kind of charter your own course and be like, well, actually, I can borrow much more than I'm borrowing for my mortgage, but I have a house that I love and I enjoy it, and I'm not going to change it because that's not in my plan. And through some of the work I do with coaching clients, it's quite and helping people with their personal finances. It's quite astonishing where you see some people with excellent salaries still without much money at the end of the month, or still without much to show for it after years and years of working. And it just goes to that point of inflation, like your lifestyle inflation can almost sleepwalk into it without without really realizing it, and then you wake up and you're 65 and wondered where your life's gone.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's really, really important. Like I'm 35 now, and I had this realization the other day that I'm halfway to 70, which when you think about it, you're like, oh, that's big. I need to be doing like something meaningful with my life, I think. So, and you mentioned as well a really important thing that people sleepwalk into stuff. I mean, some people do genuinely sleepwalk, but others, you kind of go with the flow and you get led down paths. Like you say, you eat, say, a McDonald's as a student because it's the cheapest place and it's open a lot. And then McDonald's becomes Five Guys and you can't be seen in McDonald's anymore because that's where you just don't eat anymore. You don't associate yourself with that place, and there'll always be new products, new things, shiny options to buy. I mean, if you think about the amount of, say, for example, cars that are produced, there's always a new variant every couple of years, and there'll be minor cosmetic changes. Things will look slightly different. They'll upgrade the tech. They'll write a new list of sales points, and you'll think, oh, if I don't have that, I'm missing out, because you'll see someone else with it and they'll likely take a photo, send you a photo, offer to drive you in a new car because they're happy with it. And that's just a bit on the psychology and your brain function is when you achieve things like that, or you get something like that, you get this burst of the happy chemicals, so dopamine, serotonin, and then eventually that wears off because it's part of something called the hedonic treadmill that you get this burst initially, and then it wears off and it becomes your new normal. And you get used to driving that particular car, wearing that particular shirt, living in that particular house. And then what previously caused joy can then cause pain. And it becomes then a bit of a noose around your neck, like Alex, like you said, if you buy too much house, and say there's two of you, and you buy a four-bedroom house because you might have a family one day, you then have all this extra space to clean, to maintain, to make sure it's functioning in a particular way, and the amount of square footage you have always goes up in value. I mean, I was talking to my parents the other day, and they told me that they bought their first house for like £11,000 back in 19 whatever it was, probably the 70s, 80, early 80s, something like that. But now those houses are 200, £300,000, and I can't in my head imagine it being so cheap. Even if I think about the salaries back then were a lot less due to inflation, but it was twice my dad's salary at the time. Whereas Me buying a £300,000 house now on a nurse's salary is 10 times what that would be. And I think if you think about the psychology of sales and advertising, there's an awful lot of very intelligent people being paid an awful lot of money because they know the work they do brings in more money. So if you spend £100,000 on advertising and it nets you 500,000 in profits, that's money well spent. And I think really the key word is intention. Are you making these decisions to go towards something, the lifestyle that you want to live? And if you are, that's fine. If you want to drive a Ferrari when you're a pensioner, go for it. You can absolutely do that. But make the decision and work towards it. And we talked about working backwards from making or having these particular things. So, for example, if you want a particular car when you're 50, for your 50th birthday, work out what you think it will cost, add a bit for inflation, or if you're Alex the accountant, do the maths properly and add up like a proper figure. Work back and see how much you need to save per month or invest per month to achieve it. Don't be led by the, oh, it's only this much per month, sir. And if you want a heated steering wheel, it's £2 extra a month or something like that. Make the choice yourself. Don't be led into it by someone else.
Yeah, some really, really good points there. And I think it's that, it's up to you to define what you want. And, if you're obviously if you're with a couple, making sure that you as a couple or as a family have if you're in alignment with where you want to go, I think that's always really important. Because yeah, and I think in terms of trying to determine what is a what how much money do you need for a lifestyle, there's a thing, it's called the 4% rule with within that kind of the FIRE movement or the financial independent retire early movement, that just if you were to calculate your annual expenses that are required for the lifestyle that you want and multiply that number by 25, that's the amount of money that you will need to have saved up in investments. So then every year can withdraw 4% and in theory never run out of money. So that's based on a study that was done over, I think it was a 35-year period, and it's a fairly common assumption used in retirement planning. But that's the kind of number that you would look to um, kind of to have saved up. So that's something I have and my partner has, and that then when we come to some of the choices of where the day-to-day financial choices, we know how much we need to have it invested. We know how much we need to be putting towards the mortgage so it's paid off quicker. And anything in between, if we're deciding to, could be to go out for a meal or to buy something for the house, there's always that trade-off then of, well, I know that I need X amount saved up. Is it worth sacrificing a few days of that? A few £100 or whatever there for this thing that I can get right now.
Yeah, just a thought I had whilst you were talking. So it's the study, I think it's the Trinity study, right, in '98, which is getting on a bit, and it's just a finance modelling thing which you can look up. It's quite well used in retirement planning, and I think that one of the pertinent points, Alex, you mentioned is thinking about the term trade-off. Is you can either go out and buy whatever you want right now for X amount of money, whatever it may be, or you can save that money to work towards your retirement and what you want to achieve in life. So if one of the things you want to do is to be able to take a world cruise every year and it's going to cost you, I don't know, 15 grand, say, you need to work out how much you'll need, how many cruises you want to go on, how you're going to work out how much money that's going to cost over time, because the cost will go up over time. And I think if you can work out how much you need, you can work out what you need to be putting away. And if you can invest it over time, your money can do some of the growing for you. It's not always you doing all the work. But say you've done all of that as well, you've done all that modeling, you're already investing some money for your retirement to get the retirement you want. Then, if you have some spare money, then by all means, eat at Five Guys instead of McDonald's. Buy the car you want. I mean, there's an argument here as well for living for today as well. So I used to, when I lived on my own, I used to have not much disposable money at the end of every month. And I used to buy the cheapest food possible. And I always remember buying this pack of old tomatoes that were not good in any way, shape, or form. And since traveling to Italy, I've had like really good ripe Italian tomatoes. So now the flavor gap is massive there. And for me, saving £2 on tomatoes is not worth having rubbish flavored tomatoes. So I'll always buy the good version, and I never regret it. So there is an argument there for buying the things that add flavor in my case, also but value to your life. I get by driving an old car. I don't need a flashy car whatsoever. It's probably worth less than I make per month in its entirety, depending on how much fuel is in it. But I I don't see any need to have a fancy car. I've had one in the past, and I worried about it an awful lot. It got scratched and vandalized loads, and there's a lot of freedom in having an old kind of thing like that doesn't really matter as long as it keeps you safe and is reliable. It can get you about. And I wonder, Alex, if you think the same. If you have set all of these finance things that we're talking about, and you're working towards building the life that you and your partner, your wife, husband, spouse, whatever, the life that you want, to be able to do the things that you want with money, because really it's a tool at the end of every day. There's no benefit to being the richest person in the graveyard. Give it away, be philanthropic. Like we said earlier, the supercar pensioner. I've heard a few stories of people who've had who have worked a long time, had really good pensions, and their 25% tax-free sum that they've had out their pension is enough to buy a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or something. And we said as well before we hit record, there's a big difference in having a Lamborghini when you're 65 compared with 25. 25, it's all good, everything's peachy and it sounds amazing. But when you're 65 and you're a bit creaky, getting in and out of something like that, probably not practical. So it might be, if you want to do it, maybe rent it for a week or two, or borrow one from a friend if you know someone who has one. And I think it's trading off these decisions, whether you have it now or later. And I'm strictly of the opinion that a balance is always the best thing. And balances look different to every person. I mean, Alex, yours and mine balance in terms of things might look different. I don't know. Do you buy Italian tomatoes or not?
Yes, that's your question about the do I buy Italian tomatoes? Or I do buy the Italian tin tomatoes. I do a load of kind of batch cooking, which involve like lots of ragus and curries and things. But I do notice a taste difference. But I think to the wider point on is that balance, and I know I'm guilty of, can sometimes obsess about trying to save money and take things to extremes. And ultimately, I do try and have a balance where I'm still achieving my objectives financially, but still enjoying my day to day.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing is balancing and enjoyment. There's no point slogging your way at work to not have any enjoyment whatsoever. That's a one-way ticket to, I would argue, poor mental health. I've just had an extra thought when you were talking about balancing. I'd just like to get your opinion on something. So recently, I've travelled to France with my wife to Paris or Disneyland. And on our way back, I forgot that everything in France appears to be closed on Sunday afternoon and evening. So I'd originally booked our train home for 6 p.m. and we realised everything's shut, and we just had nothing to do. So buying an earlier ticket cost us an extra £25, and it saved us 2.5 hours. I've already made the decision and saved myself the time. But if you were me in that scenario, would you think £25 is worth 2.5 hours of your time?
That's a good question. I personally I wouldn't. So that'd be £25 for both me and my partner, so 50 quid. I think, to be honest, one of my favorite things to do is just wander around the streets of cities and almost get lost. So I think I would not see it as I'm buying an extra 2.5 hours. I would just make sure I'd make the most of being in Paris and just explore the city as even though nothing is open. But I can completely get where you would. why you would do that. But no, I think for me, I would make the decision not to do that.
Interesting. I think you need some more info actually to make an informed decision. We'd spent the whole day in Paris before, the day before, like the yesterday of it, and the £25 is for the car to get home on the train under the Channel Tunnel. It's not per person, it's combined. So it's £25 to save a combined 5 hours of our time, which is 2.5 hours each. Are you still pocketing the money and wandering around Paris, or are you coming home a bit early?
Okay, that's a little bit different. Yeah, if I've absolutely exhausted my time in Paris and I'm twiddling my thumbs and I've nothing productive I can do, then whether that be reading something or drafting a blog article, then yeah, I probably would just yeah, that's not a bad shout then. If it's £25 for two of you, you've convinced me.
And that is how to convince someone to buy something they don't actually want, which is advertising 101. There's no intention there, Alex, whatsoever, and I hope you take it in good faith. It was never my intention. I think as well, it depends on your personal circumstances, really. I mean, I had a dog sitter looking after my dog at home, so if I get home a bit early, I can see my dog earlier. I get home in daylight, so it had a value to me. And we'd spent the whole day, as you say, wandering around Paris, using the metro, getting like lunch and coffee and visiting these amazing museums, which was actually a really worthwhile use of our time. I really enjoyed it, and I'd recommend Paris as a city to anyone. So, in terms of just thinking about making these financial decisions towards something, are you going towards something, or are you perhaps using your financial decisions to run away from other things? I had a quick look before we hit record about just to update my brain about debt levels for people in the UK, and it's only a quick look. It's not exhaustive at all, but I've come across the website money.co.uk, and it's just a quick article about personal debt in 2022. And I actually we had a quick chat before we hit record about it, and we both had a guess at how much we thought it would be. And this is importantly, it's not including mortgages, so it doesn't count one of the biggest things that people buy. And both of us were way off. I think we were both thinking it would be less than kind of £10,000 per adult. But actually, according to the study they've looked at, the average adult's debt, not counting mortgages in the UK, rose to £34,566 in 2022, with 4 in 5 adults, so 80%, revealing they'll start the new year, what would be 2023, in debt, which is up from 3 in 5 adults in 2021. So the problem here is getting worse in terms of those statistics, and they also mention credit card debt's the most common among UK adults, with 32% of people carrying some form of a balance into the new year. And we've discussed before about how horrendous these credit card rates are, and it's something that we were both a bit shocked by. I think we both thought it would be a lot lower than that, but it's it's much higher. Obviously, we've lived through or living through a cost of living crisis. Things are going up. Wages relative to purchasing power or inflation is going down, and I think something like that is. But people are unfortunate, obviously, to be in that thing, but be in that situation of having debt and having to obviously earn extra money to pay creditors. And I think that's where the intentional decisions can come in. If you do want to live this life where you buy the tomatoes you want, drive a Lamborghini to buy your espressos by the sea, or whatever life you actually want to curate for yourself, are the purchases you're making now, are they working towards that? Are they helping you get there? Or are they taking it away from you? Are you using future money that you haven't yet earned to buy something to make you temporarily happy now? I mean, Alex, you know a lot more financial stuff than me. What are your thoughts on the the UK debt of average adults owing nearly 35,000 is more than the average yearly salary.
Yeah, I think as you said, we were both quite shocked actually beforehand, and I think I think it's TBC whether or not that includes student debts, but I mean, just having debts, and there's almost two ways to look at debt as well. One is, are you using it to buy an asset? So say, a mortgage at least is underpinning a house, which over time tends to rise in value. So therefore, you could consider it a, it's never a pleasant debt because it's a bit of a millstone, but it's better than debt which you've gone on a shopping spree, or you've bought things which actually don't appreciate in value and depreciate in value. You've then bought, and you can be paying these balances off for years and years. And one thing which you see the rise of now is buy now, pay later. And say it could be you get 3 or 4 months of interest-free grace period, and after that point, the interest starts ratcheting up. It's very easy to, because we're in a society now where you no longer have to save up to then buy something. You're having to, it's so easy to get the thing you want, even, same day or next day delivery. You don't even have to leave your living room. You've got what you want, and then you just pay that off over the next 2, 3, 4 years. And that habit and behavior, you're using your future earning power to, and interest, compound interest is actually working against you. So it's really, and all of these decisions, because the younger you are, the better for investing. You can put money away nice and early and get it to work for you over decades and decades, which is exactly why you should start saving into your pension earlier. But we'll do another episode dedicated to that. But the more you are taking away from that, your compounding machine is also working against you with debts. And I think the other thing, it's not just financial. Debts play a tremendous role in your stress levels and your mental health. And Alex, it'd be great to get your thoughts on this. But you know, you can often feel like you're drowning. You are almost, it can take over your life. Some people, the amount of debt that is under, that people are under. And certainly, if the UK debt level is, that 30 or thousand, that's a horrendous amount of money being owed. And if there's, you've really got to question about what is it that you've actually been doing in order to go into that debt. But yeah, it'd be good to understand, yeah, just from your viewpoint, Alex, just on the mental health aspect, because I imagine that's, you might see that fairly often.
Yeah, I do. I mean, at the moment, I work with children, so it's not so much, but they can be still around it if parents have debts like that to pay. I think it just adds an extra layer of complexity to things. So if you're, say you've got all these extra bills because things are now more expensive due to the cost of living, like we all know energy has gone up dramatically, water, etc., mortgages as well, as a small thing. You have this extra thing, so you need to earn at least an extra £500 a month, for example, and that really takes away a bit of your ability to say no to things. So if you do need all of this money every month and you're really in it, paying back all these things, doing all the things right, and your boss comes to you and there's like she or he, whatever, is like, Alex, I need you to work Saturday at late notice, and then you actually say, actually, I don't really want to work Saturday, but I probably should because then I'll be in good favour and I'll keep my job so I can keep going on this grindstone that's going on. And if you don't have any debt and you have that bit of freedom and you have some emergency fund, you have the freedom then to say no. And if you have a bit of a cushion of an emergency fund money where you can buy yourself a few days, weeks, months even, to find yourself another job or to take a few days off when you're unwell without thinking and adding that extra stress of, oh, I must work because I've got all these letters at my door of having to pay all these extra bills. It really lifts a weight off you. And if you don't know what that weight is like, I've been in that position before, and it was an unfortunate situation. I ended up owing four figures to a certain company, and I just felt like I had all I had to do was work, and I questioned everything I bought. Do I really need new shoes, even though my old ones had a hole in? Do I really need that particular thing. And at that point, it wasn't Italian tomatoes or not. It was any tomatoes or not. It was the cheapest basic rice and beans, pasta, and not even cheese some days. And it really takes away some of your decisions. And I think saps your energy. You don't sleep as well. You don't think as clearly. And anyone will tell you who's been in debt before, once that debt's disappeared, you can breathe better, you sleep better, your stress levels come down, you have choice. And people say it's just such a relieving thing. And I don't know, Alex, if you've seen with any of your coaching clients, if you've helped them out of debts, have they reported similar things to you, or is that something you're yet to do?
Yeah, so I mean, one thing which I think really helps. So yeah, I have helped people help clear down debt. And one thing which there's kind of two stages. I think one is just understanding exactly what you owe and who to and how much. Because often where people are in debt, there's not normally just one or two, there's quite a few. And so just almost confronting that situation is in itself quite healing. And then putting in that plan of, well, every month you need to be paying off X amount of money against all these cards or all these debts. And as long as you do that, within 12 months, you are then free and clear. And so that's definitely something which you almost confront it, you put a plan together, and as long as you stick to that plan, and any boost in any windfall, you go against achieving that objective. And it is, even just from the first few, the first few months of doing that, it's just a huge weight off people's shoulders. And knowing that there's a plan, just having that goal and having that target means you're able to then you can better decide on some of the other financial decisions that you may have taken in the past that you're no longer going to take because you know you've got this goal. So it definitely helps. And the weight that you feel, and I think that the point that you make around it gives you some freedom, it definitely does. And knowing that you've got your own choice and you're not trapped in a certain job or a certain position because of this, because of these debts, it's incredibly freeing. And so yeah, really, really, really important. I think to tackle that and just try and become debt free is just one of the biggest achievements you can make financially, and is a real foundation then to build wealth into the future. But you're never going to do it when you've got the millstone of consumer debts and mortgages as well around your neck.
Yeah, definitely. I think for more info on that, to save repetition, we've done an entire episode on it. It's so just we'll just link back to that one if you need some more kind of information about it. But keep going in the right direction. Small steps are still steps in the right direction. So in terms of making these intentional decisions and doing things like that, it begins really from one choice that you make. And I think that choice is to put yourself or your family first before all other things. And the way I've heard some people talk about it is, say they wanted to, I don't know, for example, go on a particular holiday or something, or just to get something that they haven't had before, and they need to work out some finance situation for it. Um, One thing that I've heard before that's quite powerful is someone drew a picture of a setting sun on like a beach with a palm tree, and they put that on their fridge, so they saw it every day, and it's just a visual reminder to make the decision that will get you closer to that, rather than making decisions that are further away from it. I've also heard people who've bought houses and have mortgages to pay, and they've worked out how many payments they'll have till they own the whole house, and they divide the picture of the house up into individual bricks, and every time they pay a monthly amount off, a payment off, they colour in one brick, and they see it slowly becoming more and more theirs. And I think there's an argument there as well, because we talked about upgrading houses. There's this thing about having a starter home and having a family home and then downsizing for retirement. But if you don't need to take that step and mortgage yourself up to the hill, you can live a lot more like a life that's free, and you can choose different things rather than having to work 6 7 days a week. because you've taken on this massive mortgage for perhaps a house that's too big, that costs you more to maintain because you're working all day. You have to pay a cleaner and a gardener, so you're just borrowing future money from you that you haven't earned yet because of that one decision. So I think with big financial decisions, we've talked before, Alex, about houses being one of the biggest, probably the biggest financial decision you make in life, and then secondary, cars, lifestyle in general. If you make the core decisions right, so not having too much house, not buying a car that's too much for you to afford. We'll have a whole thing about cars and loans and PCP and stuff at some point. But if you buy the things that are within your means, it gives you the freedom to say yes to the things you like doing and no to the things you don't like doing. And I think that's something that I've held quite closely for a long period of time, and it's suited me well. And I hope to anyone listening, it's helping perhaps add another dimension to your thinking. Alex, is there anything else you want to add in terms of working towards a life that you want to create yourself rather than kind of stumbling along into it?
Yeah, there's some really nice points there that you make, and I love the idea of the picture of the house that you paint in and brick by brick, or that visualization of where you want to get to. I think for me, it's the other thing just to add is around, make sure you come up with your future goal and paint that picture and make it really vivid. And also don't be just because you don't decide to trade up your houses all the time or your cars all the time and your friends are, don't let that impact your feeling of self-worth or your goal, because ultimately the goal is to be free and live a life that you like living. And it's very easy to just fall into that trap of that hamster wheel of that, or never enough. And I would just, yeah, encourage people to be selfish and having their own mind exactly where they're going, and essentially ignore all the noise around them. Because I have plenty of uh, raised eyebrows at the dinner tables when we meet up with our friends. So I would just, yeah, make that intentional choice and stick with it.
Yeah, just as a last point, one thing you just said there, I've read a bit of a book from a nurse who works in a hospice, so people end of life terminal illness, and it's just her thoughts around it, and from asking all these questions to people who are in their 80s, 90s, some younger, I guess. None of them ever said they wish they'd worked harder or spent more time at work. The overarching message is that they wish they'd spent more time doing things they liked, spent more times with their friends, their family, gone to different places, traveled the world, not put in another 12-hour day at an office to keep up an illusion, to keep a fancy car in your drive and a house that's got too many rooms that is more dusty than can't be because you can't clean it in time. And I think there's something there about really sitting down and thinking whether you're working towards a life that you won't have any regrets from, or whether you'll think actually when you're 60, 65, like whatever, you get to that point of retirement, and the big deal in retirement is people thinking, oh, my working life is over, that's the majority of my life, and they do struggle with their mental health at that point, thinking about a bit morbid, but death and getting towards that end. I know I'd certainly want to look back and think I've lived a really good one, and I've done many things that I've wanted to do, and I've been intentional with the choices and with the money that you make over time. It's remember it's a tool to get you the things that you want, some of the things that you need, and if you can eventually look back on your life and think, actually, I've made some really good decisions here. I've given what I want to give to other people, to places that are close to your heart. You've done the majority of the things that you want to do, because it won't be everything, but if you can do the majority of them, it'll always work out nicely when you get to thinking back on life. And I think I've certainly had that realization at being halfway to 70. It's a little bit scary to think that I've only got probably, I don't know, 30 good summers left before I'm 65, and I'm staring down retirement. And if you put it that way, you've got 30 summers to go and do the adventures, spend time in the sunshine, throw frisbees in the park, or have an espresso by the sea, whatever, and whatever that means to you. And it kind of makes you think that life is actually quite short, because people say that days go quickly, but years, no, days go slowly, but years go quickly. And use the money that you have, that you work hard to earn, to really create an intentional life that when you look back on it, it's something that you can be happy with.
I think that's, yeah, some excellent sentiment there, and I think, yeah, really powerful. It's a great way to wrap up. I can't add to that at all. Completely agree.
All right, cool beans. See you next time. None of what we discuss on the show is to be considered financial or health advice, and we recommend you always do your own research or consult an independent financial advisor or a doctor when making your financial or health decisions.